we feel obligated, or we've committed to things because we thought it was the nice thing to do, or that we were being, generous, but it wasn't really our truth. It wasn't really what we wanted to do. It wasn't coming from the heart of service. And so there are these things that might need to shift. There might be things that we need to give up. There might be things that we need to just reduce to make space. But if you are living this really bold, beautiful life and it's very full and you're wanting to create something new, you also need to make some space for it. And that requires just kind of a recalibration of how you're spending your time and what you're spending it on. The whole point to sovereignty isn't for me to tell you you have to do these things and then you're sovereign and then you're free. The whole point is that I'm giving you this opportunity to ask these questions for yourself of, does this feel right for me? Is this truly what I want to do? Know that you hold the truth within you and you always get to decide.
Okay, without further ado, I want to introduce today's very, very, very special guest, somebody I've known and admired from afar from many, many years, my dear friend, Seryna Myers. Seryna, thank you so much for taking the time out to be part of our community here today.
I'm really honored to share the space with you, so I'm very excited.
Awesome. How have you been? It's been such a long time since we've met or spoken.
Yeah, it's been years. It's been really good, and it's been expansive, and then of course the roller coaster that comes with that. So it's
Of
been all of
course.
it. It's been really wonderful.
Of course. Guys,
Yeah.
can we all give fire and heart emojis in the comments to welcome Seryna here?
Hello, everyone. It's late night for you guys, right? It's 9 o'clock.
It is 9 o'clock, but you know how it is. I'm in Vancouver, but most of people here are in India, and so we do this session every Tuesday and Thursday from 9 to about 10:30. So
Love it.
it works. Everybody finishes work, and yeah. So guys, fire and heart emojis to welcome Seryna. And so Serena's got a bit of a presentation for us, and then maybe we can do a little bit of Q&A. So once again, thank you. I'm going to leave the stage to you and come back whenever you want me to come back. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Over to you.
Sounds good. So I do have a formal presentation that I will open up for you guys in just a moment. But I want to tell you a little bit about who I am before we get into it. I am an entrepreneur as well. However, I work with entrepreneurs and people who aren't in business, who are in that state of expansion, who are moving into those next levels and who are really needing that support, because like I just described, it has that roller coaster that comes with these new levels that we find. And sometimes we need a little bit of help, a little bit of guidance. And so that's what I get to do. I get to explore all of those darker, scarier parts of the emotions of the human experience, I guess. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. And I kind of use the frame of sovereignty as the way we're going to explore that. So give me 1 second. I will just open up my presentation here. Okay, just want to make sure everyone can see that. I can't see the chat anymore. We're good? Okay, wonderful. Okay, so we're looking at this as unleashing the sovereign self. And I believe that this is the tool that we have within us to be able to navigate entrepreneurship, life, growth, expansion with as much grace and ease as is possible. So here we go. Whoop. Okay, so this is how the dictionary will go ahead and define sovereignty. And I think that if we think about that as sovereignty of ourself as opposed to over someone else or over a dominion, we can start to see how this is going to be the thing that sets us free. So I look at your sovereignty as your freedom. It is your ability to define your life, to define how you want to show up in the world, to express your truth. It's how you spend your time. It's the space that you create in your schedule so you can live life on your terms. It is everything. But we have to be able to do these things to be able to create a life on our terms before we can actually live this for ourselves and then roll it out into our businesses. So when we have this idea of self-sovereignty, when we are living in this way, we are defining what success means for ourselves, which means we are getting to create our own rules and break the status quo and disrupt the ways that everyone has always been doing this. And we're starting to see this a lot with conscious entrepreneurship these days, where people are kind of breaking down the paradigms of the way business has always been done and being able to lead with intuition, being able to lead with more heart. And all of that comes from these change makers embodying their fullest truth before they're going out and showing up in their businesses. So we're going to talk about that mostly today. So yes, it's living life on your terms, deciding how you spend your time and who you spend it with. Okay, so I guess the big question is then, how do we become sovereign? To be sovereign is to have a devotion to your truth. And this means the entire aspect of your experience. So this means that we are sometimes having to challenge the expectations of others. We have to accept all of what we are, including our past mistakes. And with that, I include like whatever hair you had in the 80s, because that's definitely on my list of mistakes. We are going to have to be able to face all of those things and accept them without shame, without judgment. Really, the goal here isn't necessarily like, I love all of this, but then you can experience it with neutrality so that you're not making anything good or bad. You just know that the light and the shadow are what makes us human. We came here to have this full experience. And when we have this acceptance of who we are, then those emotions like shame and judgment and guilt aren't in the driver's seat anymore. It means we get to take back our power and we get to be able to show up in the way that we want, as opposed to showing up from the space of our conditioning. And that kind of really goes into this idea of exploring the shadow. So when we have this neutral exploration of the choices that we've made, with entrepreneurs, I see this a lot with the mistakes that we've made. If we've taken risks and they haven't paid off, or if we made decisions or we chose not to make a decision and then we ended up missing out on an opportunity. Often these things start to kind of chip away at our confidence. They start to impact how we see ourselves. They start to impact the voice that we carry in our head. And it is really important that we're able to have that recognition that that voice that's going on inside of us isn't us and isn't necessarily speaking truth. And when we can make that distinction, it means that we have the ability to then show up in ways that can recognize that these feelings or thoughts are happening with us, but we don't have to buy into them. So they don't actually get to influence our decisions. They're just sort of part of the landscape. And boundaries. When we are doing this work of sovereignty, it means that we are breaking patterns of people pleasing. We are choosing ourselves over the expectations of others or that people have placed upon us, or even what was expected from us from society based on how old we are or what our gender is or where in the world we're from. And when we do this work and we have this idea of our own entity and where we have these clear sort of this energetic sovereignty, not just personal sovereignty, but where we aren't really being enmeshed in the push and pull of other people's energies, we have this requirement of ourselves to have really pristine boundaries. In this, it means that you are saying yes to the things that really excite you and no if the body is not in a full-on yes and no. And we're going to go through a little tiny process so that you have an idea of what that feels like. If it isn't a hell yes, then it needs to be a no. And that means that even if it's upsetting to somebody, even if it, you're worried about like burning a bridge or anything like that, we can say no with grace. But this honoring of ourself, our time, our energy, and really our truth and our knowing has to be at the forefront, because this is how we're able to maintain our sovereignty. If we do all of this work to identify for ourselves what success means, to live life on our terms, and then we go and start to sacrifice our time, our energy to things that don't actually feel aligned, then we're right back to zero and we have to start the work of self-sovereignty all over again. So if you want to take a moment now and just drop it into your heart, or if you're someone who like really feels things like the gut instinct, you can even drop into your gut. And if you think about something that feels really good, maybe it's a hug from someone that you love. Maybe it's a contract that just closed with a big ticket amount and you're feeling how it feels to have that money come in. Maybe it is just the best day you ever had, the best meal you ever had, something that feels really good. And you're probably noticing if you tune into the energy of your body, it feels really open and really expansive. And this is your body's way of saying, yes, oh, I love that. That's so good. But if you were to then think about really bad weather, traffic, bad day, stepping in gum when you're walking down the street. If you start to think about those like harder, difficult, yucky kind of experiences, that same expansive feeling is going to start to close in and contract. And this is kind of our inner barometer that we can tap into anytime an opportunity comes our way, anytime we meet someone and we're trying to get a gauge on whether or not this is a relationship that we want to pursue or a partnership we want to pursue. This is your inner intuition that you can tap into, and I always say the body always knows, and the energy never lies. So you can use this tool of just dropping in, saying, "Do I feel really open and expansive, or is everything gross and contracting?" And use that to determine if something is a yes or a no, and allow your body's energy to guide you. Now, when you are someone who is in a state of self-sovereignty, when you are showing up for yourself, you are now living life fully expressed. So that means you're no longer watering yourself down. You're no longer trying to blend in. You aren't making yourself small. And it doesn't mean you have to be really big and boastful, especially if that isn't your natural nature. But what it means is that you aren't holding back. You aren't spending 3 days later playing conversations out in your head saying, "Oh, I wish I'd said this, I wish I'd said that." Because you are living in this way that's fully expressed, it means you don't have to hold back your truth. And more importantly, you have such a beautiful relationship with yourself that you don't fear your truth. You trust yourself to say the right things that honor you and that will be received with as much kindness as is possible. Now, we of course don't have any control over how somebody receives us. All we can do is be as impeccable as we can with our word. But when you have this trust in yourself and you're operating in this place where you're attracting relationships that are kind of in the similar vein, where people aren't looking for codependency, where people are their own self-sovereign entities and you guys are kind of relating together, it starts to become a lot easier to have these conversations and hold these boundaries and to be fully expressed. And you start to surround yourself with people who are safe to be the truest version of you. Okay, so I want to explore two areas today: sovereignty's impact on your life and on your business. So let's start off with the life, because we've all got one of those, right? So let's go there. So there's kind of three really key elements, and I've kind of touched on this a little bit, of how it'll show up for you in your life when you are living in this energetic clearing where you are completely independent and you're not entangled with others, where you are speaking your truth, where you're holding up your boundaries, and where you've defined success for yourself. You start to have stronger connections with yourself and with other people. And a big part of this is because you've showed up with your whole truth, you're able to fully trust the connection that you're having too, because there isn't this thought of they only love me because they're seeing the perfect version of me. They're loving me because they've seen and experienced all of me. And so that really deepens how we relate to other people. You also are honoring yourself, which develops a really great trust in yourself. It builds confidence. If you've done any work with inner child, it is really nurturing for the inner child for you to really hold your own, because they say, okay, great, I matter. She's speaking up for me. And so it gives you this idea of bringing more warmth, bringing more presence, and you are expressing yourself in ways where you're not feeling like you're stuck in regret. You're not feeling really guilty about everything because you're making conscious choices. You're not running on the programming and conditioning that you've experienced from the world or from your childhood or from the environment or social media. You're really like coming from a place that is truth for you. And when you're operating from that place, there isn't a lot of regret. There isn't room for that because you're already living in truth and integrity. And you are getting to experience more of yourself. You're not holding back, you're not holding in. And it means that when you're going in with all that you've got, like, you really choose your risks carefully. You feel really good about showing up because there isn't any part of you that is kind of hiding in the shadows or that you're pushing down and pushing away. You are being the fullest expression of yourself, and that feels really dang good. So how does it show up for your business? I think the number one thing, and this has a massive impact on your sales, is how magnetic you become. Especially when we're showing up on social media, There's the photos and the videos that we use, there's the words that we use that go along with them, and then there's the energy that is unspoken. And when we aren't aligned, so if we are saying things that we know are like the right marketing things to say, but they're not actually our truth, people can feel that. There's a disconnect in the resonance. If we are showing just the perfectly curated, picture perfect version of our life, but in behind the scenes, like everything is chaos, people are going to be like, that looks really great, but there's something about them that just doesn't quite resonate. Whereas when we show up in our sovereign self, when we get to be this purest, truest expression of who we truly are, we are then magnetic. There isn't that repulsion that's happening of like, I don't know really what's really going on behind the scenes. There's something about that person. I want to know more. And people are pulled right in. It's amazing. You also start to attract more clients, more opportunities. It could be, something like this where you're doing a partnership and sharing a talk with someone else's audience. It could be doing a podcast. It could be joint streams on social media. There's so many different ways, but we start to have these new doors open up to us because other people, maybe they're not going to be clients, but other people are drawn to our authenticity. They're drawn to what we have to say and our truth, and they want to know more. And they know that what you have to offer is valuable to their audiences. And so they start to make that open to you. So now you've had your own little circle of influence that you've been working with for however long you've been in business. And now suddenly that is expanding because you have attracted the opportunity to speak to all these new people and touch all these new lives. And I think this doesn't necessarily have the biggest impact on your bank account, but definitely on your quality of life as an entrepreneur. When you are living in truth, you find flow. Creation is easy. How you spend your time becomes effortless because you aren't censoring yourself. You aren't second guessing. You're not trying to think of the right things to say, the right things to do. It's coming through you. It is effortless and natural, and it's easy. And that makes the day-to-day stuff just so much easier for entrepreneurs. And then, of course, the byproduct of all of that is that you're making a lot more money. And with that, you're having a lot more fun making it, which, I mean, if you can have both, why not, right? Okay, so for me, I like to think of unleashing the sovereign self as these 3 steps, and we're going to go into each one of them. And I've also put together a workbook that's available for you that is going to take you into each section with some nice probing questions that will take you deeper, and that will help you uncover some of the stuff that maybe wasn't just like right at the surface consciously waiting for you. So let's go into clarity first. Okay. So when we are looking at clarity as the work of like getting clear, getting to know exactly what it is that we want and who we are then defining what sovereignty is for yourself. So for me, it's the freedom to be who I am, to do what I want, and it might be different for you. And we need to be able to have space for that to be possible so that each of us can be living our own version of our truth. So you're getting to create the rules, you're deciding what it all means, and then you start to find the different ways of aligning your life so that that becomes what you're living day to day, as opposed to just some concept that you'd like to live. The next spot kind of drops into similar to what Avi just took us through, but that is in the visioning of the desire, the impact of the world that we want to create. So you're having the clarity of like what it means for you to be able to be free and to show up in that way. And also, what does that look like? What is that world like? What does your day-to-day life experience look like? And when you have this vision, it is so much easier for you to focus on your tasks. And when those opportunities cross you, you can then sit with them and say, does this play into my big picture vision? And if not, is this something that's still worthwhile pursuing? And the one part that we don't have a lot of conversation is, who do you need to become for this to become your reality? And there's probably likely some things that are going on in your day-to-day life that needs to be shifted, that needs to be embodied, that needs to be even healed for you to be able to live this as your reality. And so we need to ask ourselves these questions of like, this version of me who is living this as their day-to-day truth, what's different between me and them? And what's the bridge so that I can get there? Next, for the course correction. So course correction is where we say, okay, we've been doing things, it's not in line to the direction we want to go. So what kind of things do we need to tweak in order to get that? The number one, this is the hard truth question, which is exploring why we don't already have that as our reality yet. And it might be that we had never given ourselves permission to dream. It might be that we have too much rigidity in our life and there wasn't room for something else to come in. It might be that we didn't believe it for ourselves. So this question piggybacks really well on that question of who do I have to become to be able to live this as my reality? And we don't want to have any shame or judgment. This is really just curiosity to explore if this is truly what I desire. Why don't I have it yet? What needs to be prioritized? And that kind of takes us to the next step, which is examining your priorities. You only have so much time, so much energy, so much money to invest in your day-to-day life. And of course, if you have friends and family and people who are taking of your time and of course that you're giving your time to, then you need to start to look at how you're showing up in your life. If you're feeling like you don't have time to do these things, but you catch yourself spending an hour every night scrolling on social media, well, maybe that's time that you could allocate towards your big dream, which sort of takes us to the next point, which is what do you need to give up? And sometimes it's things that are already that we know are actively not working for us, but that because we hadn't been operating from this boundaried, sovereign place, we felt like obligated. Unfortunately, we feel obligated, or we've committed to things because we thought it was the nice thing to do, or that we were being, generous, but it wasn't really our truth. It wasn't really what we wanted to do. It wasn't coming from the heart of service. And so there are these things that might need to shift. There might be things that we need to give up. There might be things that we need to just reduce to make space. But if you are living this really bold, beautiful life and it's very full and you're wanting to create something new, you also need to make some space for it. And that requires just kind of a recalibration of how you're spending your time and what you're spending it on. Now, this is the number one thing. If you get to this part and you're like, I don't want to give up these things. I'm afraid of the person that I want to become, or that I would have to become in order for this to be my life. Or if any of those questions created any kind of tension within you that didn't feel like the right thing to explore, you need to remember that the whole point to sovereignty isn't for me to tell you, you have to do these things and then you're sovereign and then you're free. The whole point is that I'm giving you this opportunity to ask these questions for yourself of, does this feel right for me? Is this truly what I want to do? And if it doesn't feel good, if as I'm sharing all of this, you're feeling that contraction, well, then maybe you're going to want to explore like different goals or different tactics to pursue those goals. Know that you hold the truth within you and you always get to decide. Now, once we've done this work of the clarity and the visioning, and then any kind of adjustments that we need to make to our life to be able to make space for this big, bold dream, we get to step into this really fun space, which is creation. And so in the space of creation, we have the thing that we want to create, which is really great, but we need to actually like make it tangible and anchor it and bring it here into earth. So we want to look at like, what actions do I need to take to be able to move myself forward towards this big goal? What supports do I need? Oftentimes we buy into this idea, especially as entrepreneurs, that we have to do it all by ourselves, and we don't. And we can ask for help, we can find mentorship. And sometimes we just have to actually take the moment to say, like, what is the help that I'm going to actually need? And you would be surprised how often you already have those sources available to you, but you maybe hadn't thought to tap into them, or you felt like you couldn't ask. And so this is your opportunity to kind of examine what would help you get there and faster. And then the timeline of when are you going to achieve this? This is so important because we need it for being able to measure it so that we can also decide how we're going to use our time. Having something that is really specific as to when we're going to do these things and when we want to achieve these goals is what helps keep us really focused and makes our progress really easier to measure. This is particularly true if you're working on something really, really big and the journey is long enough that it would be easy to peter out, easy to lose focus, and easy to lose stamina. So we need these wins. We need these checkpoints of saying, okay, great, I'm still on the course. Everything's great. And that's what's going to help keep us inspired. Okay, and so like I mentioned, I've put together this little workbook, and there's going to be prompts for each of those 3 sections that's going to help you go deeper and be able to actually make an action plan for yourself for your big, beautiful goals. So why does this matter? Why are we even having this conversation today? If you have lived your life according to somebody else's rules, if you have pursued someone else's definition of success, you're going to get to the finish line and be like, eh. And there is nothing more discouraging than pouring years and years of your life into creating something beautiful and feeling unsatisfied by it. It doesn't matter about how much money you make. It doesn't matter how beautiful your house is. If you haven't defined that those are the things that you want in the first place, it's all going to feel really empty. Now, if you are living your life by holding back and watering yourself down and playing small and fitting in instead of actually living boldly and speaking your truth and really taking up space, it starts to impact your confidence. Sometimes you start to question your worth or even what you know to be true. It really starts to slowly weather you down. It's like a storm just going at a rock, and the rock can be really hard, but eventually it'll start to get like chipped away and eroded. And we don't want that. We really want to be the most solid, truest version of ourselves. It's how we're able to be of the most service to our community, to our people. And so we need to be in that really solid, confident place. And we can't do that if we're still holding back. And now lastly, if you can't do it for yourself, and ideally you can, but if you can't do it for yourself, the people who you can help the most, they're not just ready, like they need the fullest expression of you. And so while you're doing this work of like questioning yourself and doubting and being in that place of like distraction and shadow, all of those people that you came here to serve, they aren't being able to be helped. They are now stuck because you aren't ready. So if you can't do it for yourself, consider doing it for them. And oftentimes when we're doing this reclamation work around our own worth and around our own confidence, sometimes we do have to do it for other people first. But in doing that, we start to remember our greatness. We start to see our impact. And then that can do a lot of that extra little nurturing to the personal growth that we need as well. Now, in case you need the reminder, you are ready. There's a reason you were on this call today. There's a reason our paths have crossed. We had no other way to meet than this call. And here you are. That is not a coincidence. That is the divine, that is the universe working and bringing us together. So this reminder is for you. You're ready. Okay. That is my presentation, darlings. So does anybody have any questions?
Guys, can we first give a big thank you in the comments before we get on to the questions, please? I love how everything from your background to what you're wearing to your presentation, everything is in sync, you know? It's just, so I'm like, oh my God, I made so many notes. I have to have a meeting with my team. And how is it because you're in flow inside out?
Thank you. This is me and my truth. And also I used to be a branding person, so I get a little bit dodgy about that. I needed to be.
Of
and
course,
it all looked the same.
it's beautiful. It is just so perfect.
Thank you.
All right. So guys,
oh, these are beautiful comments.
Yes, it is. Padma, would you like to switch on your video and ask a question? Mithilesh, you can switch on your video as well.
Hi, Seryna. This is so powerful, so powerful. I was just mesmerized and I was just taking down notes and, probably started to, I have been doing something here and there to put entire things like all together. But I feel today I've got a path how I need to find out, what I really want, a proper framework. So thanks a lot for this. My question to you is definitely when we are sitting and thinking about what I actually want, there are a lot of thoughts. There was multiple times mentioned in the presentation, no judgment, no regrets, nothing, right? But that is bound to happen. And then there are boundaries that do hold us to take certain steps. And that is what I am really struggling with at the moment. So what is your advice? How should I take it forward? I get stuck there only. with
Okay, so
boundaries.
let's first of all, oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So I get stuck there with boundaries, social boundaries, as I do a lot of judgment, take a lot of judgment on for myself. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think what you've described is a very human experience, right? And it's a product of how we're raised. It's a product of what is expected of us as humans. Um, and what I'm going to describe is not easy. And I want to make sure that I'm really clear that even though I'm saying these are the ideals of what we're striving for, that I'm not saying it's a walk in the park. I had a conversation with my my landscaper the other day, and I was so nervous. And it was just a boundary conversation of, hey, I didn't really like how this project went. So even though this is what I'm teaching, I'm still living and learning it myself. And I think it's something that we have to continually come back to. When I think about boundaries in particular, where I start to, the question I ask myself is their comfort more important than mine? And there are times where, like, I'll give you an example, when I'm having conversations with my grandma, for instance, for her it's easier, and for me it's easier for us to have a dialogue where I won't necessarily correct things, or I won't necessarily rock the boat, where I will let things slide where I wouldn't with a peer, for instance, because for me it's easier to make that compromise in that moment. But for the things that are really, really important to me, I'm fierce about it, and that's hard. Like, total truth, like I spent 4 years of not talking to my mom at one point because it was just a constant crossing of boundaries and I wasn't able to uphold it. So for me, I am able to make those really hard calls that sometimes result in things like not talking to my own mother, because that is what's true for me. That is not everybody. And that's actually asking a lot of most people. I would never ask someone to have to live in that way. For me, I find that whenever I allow a boundary to cross, there is a degree of self-betrayal in there. And so when I'm consciously choosing that, then I have to say afterwards, okay, what do I do to repair this relationship with myself for compromising it? So it's okay to be able to choose it if that's something you're consciously choosing and it's not just something that's happening as your default setting. But then it's taking the times and taking the steps to repair the relationship with yourself for having done that little betrayal, if that makes sense.
So what is a better situation, to compromise and then repair relationship with ourselves, or maybe let it go, and maybe certain relationships will get damaged if you are choosing to take care of yourself? So what is that's
the biggest thing with boundaries, is because when we first start relating with people, when we first meet them, we're training them how to treat us. And a lot of that is based on how we treat ourselves and whatever worthiness work that we have done. You will see a lot of couples that one of them will go to therapy and then the relationship will end because one person has done this real growth and they've really expanded and they've learned things like boundaries, and it's changing the dynamic of how they show up with each other. There are times where that is going to happen. But whenever we are choosing to do this work on ourselves, and when we're choosing to be more sovereign and to have better boundaries, it's also an invitation for other people to do the same for themselves. Now they get to say no to us too. Now they get to cancel plans. Now they get to do all the things that we are honoring ourselves, and they get to do it without guilt or shame or judgment as well, right? We can't choose for other people. So we can only control what we want to do for ourselves. And then sometimes we have to deal with the aftermath of that. I think the number one thing with that, though, is being really clear that you're doing this work on yourself and that these things are changing. So I had one friendship for years who he would just cancel on me at the last minute, and then he just wouldn't talk to me for 2 weeks. And then he'd figure I'm not mad anymore. So he would pop back in. And one day I just went, you know what, this is enough of this. This has been 5 years. I'm done. And I just cut him off of all social media, stopped talking to him. And 3 months later, he appeared and said, hey, so I've been in therapy. And I realized that I was a really bad friend to you. I'm like, you absolutely were. And now we have the most amazing friendship. But it was like, we needed that break as almost like a reset point, because now this new version of me and this new version of him from therapy, we're able to build a new friendship together. So we can only do what we can do. But I think having some communication that these changes are taking place helps, so that people aren't caught off guard and wondering why suddenly you're standing up for yourself and setting boundaries that you never did before. And then allowing them to be able to set the same boundaries as well and to honor themselves, because we become the examples of what's possible.
Right. Thanks a lot. This last example gave me a lot of my answers. Thank you.
good. Oh, you're so welcome. I'm glad.
Thank you, Padma. Mitesh. And Asha, you can switch on your camera.
Yeah, hi, Seryna. First of all, thank you so much. Like, I wrote a comment as well. When you were speaking, I felt like it's like my reflection is talking to me, to be honest, like my inner self, like, no, each and every word of yours totally resonated, with the current phase I am in. So,
I love that.
yeah, right from the childhood, I have been like this. I've been like, a giver, but I do get affected from others' energy. I did not know it back then. I know it now. I have gone through a massive transformation changes. I have done it recently. So first of all, thank you so much for really giving insights. I have a question like, so I come from an engineering background, which is a technical side of me, and I'm a business coach and mindset coach, but I have a highly dominating spiritual side. I mean, it's like, that is me. So even if I go to social media, I think about creating a content on, like business coaching. I end up creating content on really, teaching people about the life values, and really connecting to yourself, be aligned to yourself. Then I think that, this is what naturally is coming, to me. And I have been thinking, am I not listening to my intuitions well? Like, there is a side of me which is speaking to me to, really get into like coaching, kind of, I mean, I don't know how to put it in words, like life coaching, spiritual coaching, wherein you are actually making a difference in others' life. Because a lot of people, even in my friends, in my family, when I speak to them, something shifts in them, they say it, and I have not been probably listening to that, and I've been more focused towards what my background has been, like coming from engineering MBA background. So how do I listen to my intuition, like really, I mean, so you are like a God's voice to me, to be honest.
You are actually describing my journey very clearly, which is very funny. So
like
I came from,
when you said branding, oh my gosh, I was like totally blown away by what you were speaking today. Like,
thank you. Yeah, I started out in internet, like software sales. That was the beginning of my career, and that's what I did in corporate. And that's actually when I started finding my spiritual side. I had really locked it away for a really long time. And the more I was trying to get to know myself, the more opportunities and my connection with the universe, with my intuition, my psychic gifts started opening up. All these things started happening. And so when I left corporate and I eventually started working for myself, I really had this belief that my spiritual side and my work side were different. And I kept trying to have this business, but this kept like sitting on the other side because this was my truth. This was what I did. This was my truth. And what I realized, the way that I had the most impact and the way that I could like show up the best is when those two started to intersect. Because how we do business is how we do life. And so if we are spiritual people pretending that we're not, to be able to, do business offerings, that's only bringing part of our gifts to the table. And we weren't given these gifts so that we could show up with half of them. We were given our gifts to put them into the world and to be of service. So, there is the work of doing what you're comfortable with sharing. I had a really hard time saying that I was psychic until like maybe 4 years ago. It was just a word. I'd be like, oh yeah, like I'm kind of intuitive, or I kind of know things, but I would never overtly use the word psychic. And then the more I did, and the reclamation that came from that, like that was me owning my gifts. And as a business coach, I remember someone saying to me, well, I don't want to hear anything about the angels. I just want to, I just tell me the strategy, tell me what to do with my business. And I was like, I can, but it's all coming from the angels anyway. So whether you want to hear from them or not, they're the ones coming through me. This is just the work that we do. If you resonate with me, you resonate with them. We're a package deal. So, it's getting comfortable with owning it. It's trusting that the right people are going to resonate and that you're going to be able to help us so many more. It seems like it makes the pool smaller because there are people, this is like the business pool, and like and the spiritual business pool is smaller, but you have a lot less competition. You have a lot deeper impact. And when you show up as the truest version of yourself, they're like, I want what she's got. And they can't do that if you're holding back.
No,
Does that make
truly, no, truly, thank you so much. Like that's what, like, no, really, I really would like to listen to that inner voice, which really like keep pushing me. And I somewhere feel I've not been doing justice to probably so many people out there who would really be helped by what I'm gonna offer. So yeah, thank you so much for your.
Don't forget, you get to choose though. Like that might have been how you did things before, but you get to start over anytime you want, anytime you're ready. So don't think about, oh, I could have helped those people differently. Like, yeah, you could have, but you then wasn't ready yet. When you are ready, they'll be ready.
Yeah, that's a great thing. I'll keep that in my mind. Thank you so much. Really, really, really. Thank you.
You're so welcome. It's been so nice chatting with you.
Thank you,
Same
Mithilesh.
here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Asta.
Thank you, Avi. Hi, Seryna. Thank you. It
Hello.
was such an amazing session. Completely resonate with, showing up as my sovereign self. I've been working on it, made some really difficult choices, still on the journey. So I have two questions. One of them you've partly answered, but I'll still put it. So the first thing, when you say boundaries, so how do you really distinguish a lot of times? And I know it comes from a clarity of who I am and what do I really want, but how do you distinguish whether it's a boundary that I'm setting, or is it coming from maybe some trauma or, my past, and I'm just acting out there?
Mm-hmm.
Gets difficult sometimes.
Yeah, like it is, but here's the thing. Even when we're having a trauma response that creates a need for a boundary, it's still true. It's still real for us. It's not like we can dismiss it and go like, oh, that's just trauma. I don't need to deal with that. Like that is still something that is alive and vibrant that needs to be. And oftentimes while we're doing this work of like unearthing our trauma and facing the hard things that we've experienced in our life, we need to have those extra boundaries to be able to do that work in its own little bubble. As those parts start to heal, as our nervous system starts to regulate and things our capacity and our resilience is expanded, a lot of the boundaries, they don't necessarily come down, but they come further out. It's easier to let people in when we feel safe, when we feel held and whole. So I don't want you to dismiss the root cause. If there is a call for a boundary, whether it's coming from trauma, whether it's coming from self-worth, when it's coming from just like a pattern and a dynamic with a particular person that you just need to have boundaries with, all of those reasons are valid. If you feel the call for the boundary, put it up. And then know that the work that you do on yourself will make it easier to let people in.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And the second one, where you were just sharing about, so you work with entrepreneurs, right? That's what you said.
I do. Mm-hmm.
So you did say that, when you are ready, people will show up, and maybe the pool is small of those spiritual people, but still, in a place where we are looking at, okay, what would the client want? Let's talk their language and all of that. And people at times are not quite accepting of the whole spiritual thing, at least in India, not yet, where they say, oh, okay, talk to me something which is, real, like literally real. And all of this, working on myself and spiritual and all of this, even though we may not use those terms, but still. So where, how do you create that acceptance? And also, like, even then do you stick to who you are and this is what it is, and then people show up and like,
yeah. So there's a term I use with my clients called unshakable certainty. And so when we develop this, just like this hard knowing of our truth, which is essentially like part of our sovereignty, but when we just know who we are and like what our truth is, that helps us navigate those situations. So if I show up in my full truth and someone goes, it's not for me, then that's just not my person. And I'm okay with that. I don't take it personally. It just means that I'm not the one to help them. And I'm okay with that because I know that there are people that I am here to help. The thing that's really beautiful about unshakable certainty, because often when we have those rejections from people who don't want to do business with us, it can impact our confidence, right? But when you are so unshakably sure of who you are, you're just like, it's not a fit. And it's the same thing. This is the example I always give. Like, I'm 5'6". And if someone came to me and said, you are really tall, I could look at them with certainty and say, I'm 5'6". I'm average. I am average at best. I'm on the shorter side of average.
Sure.
And I know that with truth. And if someone, I'm not going to be offended that they called me tall. I know what is true for me, right? And we need to have that same certainty in our values, in our impact, and in who we are. So that when someone says like, ooh, that's a little spiritual for me, that's a little weird or whatever, where it's just like, hey, that's cool. Like, this is just who I am. I'm 5'6" and I happen to also be very spiritual. And if neither of those things work for you, then that's okay. Someone else will be the one to help you. And you would be surprised at the people who may not be overtly open, but who are listening to the stuff that you post. I get messages from people who I went to high school with, who I've had no contact with for the last 20, 25, however many years it's been. And they will come out of the woodwork and they will share things about like, do you remember when you talked about such and such? Like, that really impacted me. And I was just sharing my truth, and I had crickets to the point where I was like, does anybody even care? And they were listening. They just weren't being public about commenting about it because they weren't their most sovereign self. So you would be surprised. You'd be surprised how many people are listening and how many people are ready.
Got it. Thank you so much, Seryna. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. We have a last question from Momita. Momita, you were here. You can switch on your video back again and ask your question. If
I can't start my video.
yeah, Parth, can you help Momita start her video, please?
Good evening. It's good evening in India. Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Yes. It was a wonderful, wonderful, you saying these things to me. For me, it was like, I keep listening to this, but end of the day, I keep falling back into my pits where I feel I'm not good enough to start or do something. And Mr. Avi knows that, every time I come to the video, I feel so energetic, but then I go back to my pit. But I know, like you were sharing about your spiritual strength and everything, but same here. I also feel the same thing. I feel that I have the power. It's like volcano ready to erupt inside, but outside the facade shows that, okay, I'm not ready yet.
Mm-hmm.
And this day I have spent so many years thinking like that only. So after listening to your video, I have to ask this question, like when you start, when you begin, like for example, if I want to start a YouTube channel, I am talking to people and I'm impacting their lives informally, unprofessionally. But now that I want to do it professionally, I just don't know. I have started my journey, but I don't know in which direction to take it. So what are your inputs there?
So you say you don't know which direction to take it. What do you mean by that specifically?
For example, like I have been a communications trainer. I have been a soft skills trainer, but that was like few years back, a long time back. Now I want to restart my career, but I feel the world has changed around me. Though I feel, it's that feeling, that the world has changed and you don't know in which direction to go. Or I have started my journey, but this initial stages, which keep me pulling back into my pit, that let it go, because I have been always wired like that. Okay, fine, my interests are not enough. Like you were talking about sovereignty and talking about yourself, giving importance to yourself. I haven't done that. So I don't know how to really work on this for a long time. Though when I come to these videos and these classes, I feel so energetic and so pepped up. But I think it goes back to the same old me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel I have to restart. I have to restart, and time is passing by and I'm not able to do it. So what are your advice there or input there,
Okay.
I can't call myself I can't call myself an entrepreneur right now, but I want to become one. So I don't know really.
Okay. So The first thing I would do is all those people that you helped informally, if they're people that you know as opposed to just strangers on the internet, reach out to them and ask them for testimonials, ask them to describe to you. If it's a friend, say, can you describe to me like what your experience was like when I gave you this advice or when I helped you in this way? And first of all, look for commonality of like different things that people said. For me, I did a testimonial campaign with past clients in January. And the thing that I noticed is almost every single person said the word life-changing. And I was like, well, I need to use that in my copy because apparently that's what people are saying about me, and that's really great. But the biggest thing is when I am having a crap day, when I am feeling really bad about myself, when my self-esteem has taken a dip, I go and I watch those videos, or I go and I read those emails. And I go, you know what? I might feel like crap, but I'm not crap because these people said all this great stuff about me. And it's really validating of our gifts and our impact. With the reverting back of being really, really inspired and then reverting back into just doing the day-to-day stuff where you're not moving forward in your goals, I think it's really important that you're getting really clear about what it is that you want to do. And the only way you can do that is two things. One, take off the pressure of I'm running out of time and time is passing by. You're still here. You're still kicking. You got time. Let's take the pressure off. The second part is to be really curious and to play. So when you're experimenting with ways that you can share your gifts, experimenting with ways that you could do business, experimenting with even what social platforms you want to show up with, do it from this place of curiosity instead of this is the work. I have to figure it out. It's just like, hey, do I like doing this? Nope. Okay, let's try something else where there's no attachment, there's no heaviness. It's just curiosity and exploration, which will make it a lot easier for you. And the other thing I would really encourage when you get the workbook from today's call, there's an action plan in there. And use that when you do these clarity questions and you get to the heart of like, this is how I want to show up, actually write it down, pen to paper. This is what I'm going for. This is when I'm going to do it. And these are the steps I'm going to take to get there. And having that, I don't remember what the percent is. I think it's like 30 or 40% people are more likely to achieve their goals if they actually write them down. So do that and then keep coming back to it. Put it somewhere you're going to see it regularly so that when you find yourself reverting back to your old ways, you're like, wait a minute, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to do all this cool stuff. What can I do? What's one thing I can do today? And don't disregard the baby steps. If you are moving even like a millimeter closer, that's still progress and we got to celebrate it. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I just hope I reach that point. And what I've understood is writing them down, though I'm doing it, but putting it up and really, I don't want to run away from it anymore.
You know what? You could even put reminders in your phone that say like, you know, try such and such or journal about this or whatever, where like every day you get a pop-up on your phone that just gives you a nudge. And even if you don't act on it, you've had the reminder and you go, oh yeah, because I'm becoming an entrepreneur. This is actually my truth. This is something I want to do. That way, even if you're still living your regular life, you're getting these sparks, these nudges, these reminders to pull you closer and closer to your big dream.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Bhavika. I thought we had a last question, but sorry, we have just one more. Is that okay, Seryna?
I got the time, yeah.
Thank you so much. Purti, that will be the last question of the day that we take live. You can switch on your camera. There we go.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Sernya. Hi. Yeah, I have a question that when you start respecting your sovereign self and start setting boundaries, then there are certain people who may like just come suddenly to you and like today evening I had an experience that this guy came to me and he just said that, you know, I really dislike you. Like I was talking this normal stuff with him, like our new manager is really nice, and he said, but I want to share that you are not that nice because I refuse certain work at work, and I set a boundary which was not my work. So you know, people start take the liberty of being like really mean to you sometimes when you start setting boundaries. They dislike you, and then it made me think, like, now that I want to be in my own tribe and choose who I want to be with, people start taking you as proud, arrogant, haughty, these are the things that people judge you with, and you tend to be disliked by a lot of people. How do you deal with that? Because sometimes people are very upfront and they may speak behind the back. How do you deal with all this kind of thing when you start setting boundaries?
Yeah, it is a lot easier to set boundaries with new people than with old people that you've had in your life for forever. Like in my case, my parents.
And
It's really
this
hard.
is a new person. These are new people who they judge. When
Interesting.
you, these are all new people who judge you that way.
That's very interesting to me because I find usually when I meet somebody and I'm in this really embodied place that they're just like, okay, that's what she is. And maybe it's also that I'm in a state where they just wouldn't dare to say it to my face. That's also very possible. I don't know.
I think there are people take the liberty of just coming and saying it on my face sometimes.
Yeah.
If
Now,
their
I've
work
been
is not
called a
getting done.
snob. I've been called
Yes.
selfish. I've been called greedy.
Yeah.
I've
Right.
had people question but the thing is that when I look at the people that I've helped, when I look at the way that I've invested in myself, when I look at the journey that I have overcome from having been like I grew up in poverty, I grew up around crime and violence and addiction, and I'm living this really nourishing, soulful life. I look at that and I'm like, that's my credibility. This is the work that I have done. This is the impact that I can create. So if I'm just a mirror, just like you're a mirror to these people and even to me while we're having this conversation, we're mirrors for each other, right? So when they're projecting these things onto you, it has nothing to do with you. This is all about like their internal processing, their assumption. And a lot of it is usually envy. A lot of it is, I wish I could say no. I wish I could have boundaries. I wish I could this. And so instead of owning the fact that they are choosing that for themselves to not behave in those ways or to not have that success, they would rather make it that there's something wrong with you. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. And there's nothing wrong with them. They're allowed to do their thing too. But this is their projection. This is not your truth.
Those people who are really bitter from inside, and if their work is not getting done, then they just feel okay. They just feel okay to just blurt out like this and then that makes me question my own sovereign self. That made me think for a long time, is it people pleasing or what? Like I am not able to take that somebody dislikes me this much, so it affects me still. So
and that's the
it
work.
makes me doubt myself actually, that am I really being wrong by setting this kind of boundary? And then I feel no, I cannot like just do justice to my time and work if I don't set boundaries. People will end up disliking me.
When we didn't learn boundaries growing up, when we're trying to implement them as adults, it's like any new muscle group, right? So when you go to the gym, you don't sit down and bench press 200 pounds for the first time because you would probably break your arms off. That would be crazy. So you'll start off with those little baby weights and you're going to make them really strong. And then you're going to work up and build it stronger and stronger. And boundaries and setting those kind of things, that's exactly the same thing. So the first boundary you're going to set is not going to be with the person you're the most intimidated by. You're going to do it with someone where the stakes are really low. Someone's going to ask you, someone's going to deliver food at a restaurant and you said, no peppers, and they put peppers, and you might say, excuse me, can I please have this with no peppers like I asked for? Like you do it really nicely. That's a pretty low stakes boundary of like, I'm paying for this thing. This is what I asked for. Can we please make this right? Then you start to build up into more and more higher stakes boundary setting until they just become who you are. But by the time you get to those higher stakes things, you've had so much practice, you have so much resiliency that when you set a boundary and someone pushes back, it doesn't mean anything about you. You're just like, I've done this 100 times before. I know that this is your stuff. I know that you're uncomfortable with the fact that I'm holding this space for myself, and that's okay. Neither of us is wrong. This is just, we're not a fit right now, and that's all right. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
It's just practice. It's a lot of practice.
Yeah, I guess that's more of a practice of being able to accept people not being happy with us. I think that is something which I have to learn. Like to dislike us I should be also okay with people not liking me also sometimes.
And you're awesome. If they don't like you, that's them missing out, honestly.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All righty. Thank you, Purti. Seryna, that was fantastic.
Thank you.
And, we have a Facebook group with almost about 30,000 people. And what we do is every Thursday that we have a masterclass like this one, we ask everybody to give us their biggest takeaways. And also we invite the guest of the day to join that Facebook group and interact with people. If they like it, continue or leave in a day or two, whenever, whatever. So can I share that link with you?
I would love that. Yes.
Awesome. So Parth,
Let's
can you
keep it
please
going.
share that link with Seryna for that group? Awesome. And for all of you people, there is a link on there's a post on that group which is asking you what has been your biggest takeaway from Seryna's talk today. Please go ahead, take 1 minute and put your biggest takeaway there. And once you've done that, all of you, once you say done, then Seryna has a few workbooks for all of you people. Awesome. Seryna, till everybody comes back after posting the comments on that Facebook group, how have you been? And are you in BC? Are you traveling? What's happening?
I am in BC. I moved to the island though. So we're living in
Where?
Nanaimo now.
Oh, Nanaimo. Nice.
Yeah.
I'd gone to Comox the other day and I passed by Nanaimo.
Yeah, you would have gone right through us. Yeah,
Yes.
we found a beautiful house 5 minutes from the ocean.
Wow.
And so yeah, we became island people now.
That is amazing. I spend at least once a week on Gibson's.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
that's beautiful there.
It is beautiful, yeah. So just taking the
That's
ferry
wonderful.
back and forth is so therapeutic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been
Nice.
really enjoying the float plane going back and forth to Vancouver.
So $130, 20 minutes? Is
Yeah,
that what
it
it is?
depends on the day and depends on how organized I was and if I booked it in advance or not. But yeah,
But how long is the flight?
20 minutes.
20 minutes. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because I still go to the dentist in Vancouver.
Of course, of course.
Yeah, I still have my doctor there, so I go back and forth.
Of course. Oh, that's fantastic. That is so nice to know. And when I was traveling through Nanaimo, I met a few people who had just recently moved there, and they said, "Look at the air over here. It is so clean. It's not like Vancouver." And you look at Vancouver, it's supposed to be one of the best cities in the world, and then it only gets better as you go to the island. So the island life is the new black.
Yes, the pace is slower. And I notice it when I go to Vancouver. As soon as I hit downtown, I start to my shoulders start to come up and everything starts to get tense. And I'm like, oh, we're in Vancouver again.
Right.
There's an ease and a slowness here. It's really beautiful.
But there's still a bit of a, like a bit of a downtown and
It's like that big.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of culture going on. We really saw it as investing in the future of the city that was growing, as opposed to having it all cool now. But we're not young kids anymore, so we didn't need a nightlife and lots of things to do. We just want some good food, good people, a nice house. That's all we needed.
That is fantastic. I'm so happy to hear that. All right, guys. So, there are 50 people here. We should take care of them now. So guys,
Hello,
have you posted on the Facebook group your answers? If yes, please type done. And I will just give Seryna the approval. There we go. Ask to join. And
Am I there?
I think so, yeah. I just clicked it and said now 0 requests. Could you please check?
Let's refresh it here. I didn't answer the questions. Oh, I'm in now.
Awesome. Awesome. So there we are. We have we have about 10 people who have commented.
Beautiful. Thank you, guys.
So guys, for all of you people, there's a link, just a reminder, there's a link for all of you people to post your biggest learning, because Seryna said, when you write something down, it becomes a little more permanent in your head. Okay. So is the workbook is for only the people who are commenting, right?
I mean, and the workbook can be to whoever you'd like to give it to.
Of course, I'm just kidding. So we just like to get people more engaged so that they go back with something which is more permanent and not just inspiration. So that's why we make them write down everything in the Facebook group as well. And at the end, we always have a challenge, and the challenge is we have them create a video as if they were teaching somebody else what they had learned, as a small video that they post on another Facebook group that we have. So people who engage are always deeper in learning with us. So Yeah. So everybody done? Everybody who wants the workbook is done with the comments. Awesome. So thank you very much. Seryna, you can send us the workbook now.
I will. Get the link for you. I think your team has it as a PDF as well, but I can send it
Awesome.
here as a link through Canva. Can I just add that to the comments,
Oh, please.
to the chat? That should have it there. I'm like you. I don't want to just talk about it. I don't want to just inspire. I really want to have like those questions, those goal settings, make it really tangible. And so that's what this workbook does.
No, I so appreciate it. I so appreciate it. Guys, have you all got the workbook? So workbook, how much time does it take? Maybe we can make this the challenge of the day.
Filling out the book?
Yes.
It's pretty long.
But we give them a week before. Okay, this is lovely, beautiful, lovely. So this is it. I've got the challenge of the day.
Love it.
You know what I want to learn from you is how to get everything so beautiful.
Oh, we can talk about that.
I would love to. I would love to. Will I have to take the seaplane and come and meet you in person?
Yeah, or I mean, I'll come hang out with you in Vancouver either way.
Awesome. You know what? I'm so much about the island life the last 2 months that I just pick up the car and I just travel.
Awesome.
Like I
Okay,
said,
well then we'll see you here.
Awesome. I'll make that happen. I will definitely make that happen.
I would love that.
Perfect. Guys, as a big thank you, can we once again give fire and heart emojis in the comments, please?
You have the best people. This is
Yes,
so lovely.
I will take that. I totally agree with that. Awesome. Seryna, thank you so much. This was
Thank
such a
you.
pleasure connecting after such a long time. And so great to know that, that how you're working on yourself and helping entrepreneurs. And would definitely maybe, think of doing something much more deeper with our community and, clients over here as well that I consult with on entrepreneurship, on how we can do this together. And yeah, I'll set up a time to speak to you on the phone and then maybe come and visit you soon. Thank you very much for your time.
Have a great night, everyone.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.